During a White House event this week celebrating Olympic and Paralympic athletes, President Biden said they would have wanted to go to the games in Paris, but couldn't because he causes a, quote, commotion everywhere he goes. Never more than when he tries to go for a second term. It was a commotion.
A bit of a commotion. Well, those guys, how many commotions do they have? About 550 commotions, I think. Dozens murdered, thousands looted. You know, speaking of which, you see the bunch of illegal aliens arrested for looting in the aftermath of the hurricane? Democrats, obviously Democrats. The Democrats are importing looters, gang members. Barack Obama warned us that we've got to learn to speak Spanish because they have a plan. You know, what was the Fred Thompson line in Hunt for Red October? Ruskies don't take a beep without a plan. And, the Democrats are the Ruskies. The Cold War didn't end. It only morphed. We don't call them the Soviet Union anymore. We call them the Democratic Party. Keeping in mind that they really aren't, are they? Democratic, that is. Extraordinary stuff. Happy Thursday and welcome. Such hijinks going on. Can I tell you the hijinks? It's just whack-a-doodle-doo out there. We've got so many giant stories today. Jack Smith, the prosecutor's special counsel, assigned to put President Trump in jail for whatever they can come up with. That's his deal. And yesterday he decided to interfere in the election because along with that Judge Chutkan, I like, when I am having crab cakes, I like a little Chutkan on the side, a little bit of minced Chutkan on the side, I think is pretty good. But Judge Chutkan and Jack Smith, they blew something up yesterday. They decided to get all political and to tamper with the presidential election. You know, you might call it, in fact, the first word I got of this yesterday, I was at Newsmax, and first thing I heard was, here's, what is this, the October surprise? And Jack Smith unsealing a motion filled with schmutz on President Trump that they kind of ginned up themselves, and they don't care. They just want to blow stuff up and then later loot it, probably, because they like looting too. Like the illegal aliens. Well, 8 illegal aliens looting in the aftermath of the hurricane. And that's not a news story because the Democrats don't want people talking about illegal aliens looting in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. I really wish it were called Hurricane Hillary. I'd like it better if it were Hurricane Hillary. Much better. So we've got that wacky story going on. The Jack Smith election tampering. President Trump correctly and rightly identified it as election tampering. He's good at this stuff. Nothing gets by him. We've also got, since I mentioned Hurricane Helene and the illegal aliens looting, 8 illegal aliens arrested for looting, it turns out FEMA ran out of money because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been giving hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to illegal aliens because they opened the border and waved the gangs in and the child sex traffickers and the fentanyl traffickers because 100,000 fatal drug overdoses last year is not enough for the Democrats. They want more. And so, because they don't like human life, they don't like people, they don't like you. They certainly don't like me. I know that they don't like me. But that means there's something wrong with them because everybody likes me. I mean, let's be honest. You know, every normal person. That narrows it down pretty rapidly right there, doesn't it? Rules out almost every Democrat left in the country. Amazing stuff. So we've got, FEMA doesn't have any money because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris been funneling money by the hundreds of millions of dollars out to jurisdictions that they have flooded with illegal aliens, like the cat eaters. Are they cat eaters? Can we call them the cat eaters? Like the Haitians. They got the Haitians. And Springfield, Ohio. And that's just scratching the surface because New York, you remember, it was Democrat mayor of New York, Eric Adams, who was yelling and caterwauling about not having enough money, and the federal government wasn't helping with money, even though they were flooding New York City with illegal aliens, which they deserve, I think. And And it's just because if you're going to wreck everything, then, start with Martha's Vineyard. They also arrested what are they, child sex traffickers on Martha's Vineyard, and the illegal aliens on Nantucket, and New York City being overrun, and Springfield, Ohio, and Chicago, and the list goes on. The Democrats are here to wreck the place. They hate the place. They smile in your face all the time. They want to take your place. The backstabbers. So we got the update on them ruining FEMA. Who's the head of FEMA? Nobody knows who the head of FEMA is. I think the employees at FEMA don't know who the head of FEMA is. I don't think Joe Biden knows who the head of FEMA is. Kamala Harris definitely doesn't know who the head of FEMA is. Well, let's face it, neither one of them know who the head of FEMA is. But it's out there. It's amazing. And that's not all. That's not all, certainly. We've also got the Doug the Thug Slugger. His nickname, he's got new nicknames now. Doug Emhoff is Kamala Harris's beloved husband. And the news media, they can't wait to give him another tongue bath. They love to just run their freshly shorn tongues up and down one side up one side and down the other, I think, more appropriately. Doug Emhoff, he's the model of masculinity in America. And the manliness that Doug Emhoff exudes has the Democrats really dazzled. And that's really because they don't like masculinity. And so they found a substitute, and the substitute is named Doug Emhoff. He's not a manly man. Never in his life has he had an experience like the one he's having now, where people all over the place are calling him manly. It's kind of amazing. He did knock up the nanny. I guess the nanny found him to be somewhat manly. The nanny, she was the school teacher, too, teaching the little kids in his first marriage. You might begin to understand why he calls it his first marriage. And so he's, boink, boink with the school teacher of his kids, who he wink, wink hired as the nanny to get her into the house, and then chases her around like the Marx Brothers with a little horn on his belt and stuff. And then she becomes pregnant, and we don't know what happened. We don't know what happened to the child, the little baby. But we figure that it got the baby harp seal treatment. It probably got the, and clubbed it and harvested the organs. Maybe they harvested the organs. We don't know for sure. But if they did, they put them in little lucite blocks and hand them out as paperweights, just the little pieces of thing. But that's another. So Doug Emhoff, and I told you the story. We were on the air yesterday when we got the story from the Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom, and not the New York Times or not the Washington Post and not CNN. They didn't report the story because they're not news organizations. They are the kind of the tongue bath equivalent of, they're the car wash version of the tongue bath. We were just talking about Jimmy Hoffa's dead body being in the back of a car, the trunk of a car, and they brought it to the car wash after Jimmy Hoffa was killed, and they didn't let him open the trunk because Jimmy was taking a nap back there. That's union stuff. They got a lot of union stuff going on there. And that brings us to the next big story of the day, and that's the longshoreman strike, the dock strike, because the gangster head of the longshoremen's union, it's called an association. It's not called a union. It's called the International Longshoremen's Association. They're associated with whom, you might want to know. Well, I've got a bit of that because longshoreman strike and the president of the Longshoremen's Association, Harold Daggett, I was talking about him yesterday. He was, I don't know if he's worse than Doug Emhoff or if because Doug Emhoff, he brought his date, they had been dating for 3 months, to the Cannes Film Festival in France. Can you say Cannes and France in the same sense? So the Cannes in France, and they were having a nice time when Doug Emhoff decided that his girlfriend of 3 months with whom he traveled to France said that she was flirting with somebody. So what did he do? Well, he's got lots of toxic masculinity in him. He's too masculine. So what did he do? That's what he did. He smacked her so hard across the face that she went spinning off. Spinning, I tell you. And that's okay. When you're a Democrat, that's all right because of the Kennedy family. They made it okay. And Bill Clinton, and Hillary Clinton for that matter, too. She's a spousal abuser as well. She'd thrown ashtrays at Bill Clinton's head and stuff, bouncing things off her head because she's not a nice person. She's Hillary, But honestly, now we have Doug the Thug. He's known. I think I heard Vince Colonnese yesterday call him Doug the Thug, and now he's also being called Slugger Emhoff, because when you're a Democrat, this is not a news story. Have we checked? I asked Michael to check, see if CNN or MSNBC had mentioned Doug Emhoff slapping this woman in France, in Cannes, at the Cannes Film Festival. And they had just been to a party. Somewhat ironically, they've been to a party in Cannes because there's a film festival. And who was hosting the party, Michael? It was Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, abuser of women, was hosting the party. And maybe Doug Emhoff just got a little bit of the Harvey in him, got a little Harvey Weinstein going through his something or other, because, you don't want anything going through Harvey Weinstein's anything. But when you're a Democrat, this is all okay, because all the Democrats knew about Harvey Weinstein being a rapist for years and years. They knew about Bill Clinton for years and years. They never say anything about it. It's just amazing. They got Anthony Weiner, he was married to Humma Weiner for a while. Now Humma Weiner is with Alex Soros, the son of George Soros, and they're buying hundreds of radio stations. And the corrupt Biden administration, they're having the FCC expedite the George Soros purchase of hundreds of radio stations because they want to destroy the world and leave it a burned-out cinder, unrecognizable to those that came before the Democrat Party. Pretty amazing stuff. So, I saw, just Joe Biden is the crises president. Is not the crisis president. That would imply only one crisis. He's the crises president. We have an economic crisis with the longshoremen's union strike, these gangsters. I didn't even finish that story. Harold Daggett, do you know the story about Harold Daggett being charged by the federal government under the RICO statutes? And then one of the guys involved in the case, associated with a well-known New York organized crime family, they're Italian, and the guy involved in the case with Harold Daggett disappeared. They couldn't find him for weeks. Then they found him. You know where he was? He was in the trunk of a car. He was dead, of course, because, how long do you stay in the trunk of a car if you're not dead? He was found in the trunk of a car. Where was the car, Michael? It was in the parking lot of a diner in New Jersey, a diner where you get a nice breakfast and, some hash browns and stuff. This story is just amazing. Now, who's worse? That's where I started, I think. Doug Emhoff or Harold Daggett. Harold Daggett's got this. He's threatening the whole country, and he sounds like a total Hollywood gangster. Like you'd say, nobody talks like that if you're watching a Scorsese movie or something. That's a wild exaggeration of gangsterism. But that's Harold Daggett, and he's got a yacht. He's got a Bentley, apparently. He's got a house in Florida, a $2.5 million house in New Jersey. He makes more than $900,000 a year. There's a dead guy found in the trunk of a car in the parking lot of a diner in New Jersey. And they're taking over the country, and they're threatening everybody. If you're a car dealership or a grocery store owner, they're threatening you right to your face. He's cursing in your face like a squid. It's like a squid. And the squid's cursing in your face. Amazing stuff. So we got Jack Smith. We got the Longshoremen's Union. We got Hurricane Helene and FEMA's out of money. We got Doug the Thug, the slugger who wants to be the first gentleman, right? Illegal aliens looting, and it's 33 days until Election Day. If only we had a legitimate news media, I wonder what they'd be doing. What would they be doing? They'd be trying to bed Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think. You see a news story out about him today. Apparently she's not the first one. Olivia Nuzzi. The Democrats. Also, it's a big Jewish holiday today. Do you know which big Jewish holiday it is? We are at 888-630-9625. That's right. The crises president. Mr. Multiple Crises President. And it is Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, big Jewish holiday. And so happy Rosh Hashanah to everybody that is Jewish and pro-Israel. And that rules out almost every Democrat, I think, doesn't it? Amazing stuff. And we've got, it is, in the Jewish calendar, in the Western, the Gregorian, the Christian calendar, the Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, it is the year 2024. You may be aware of that. And then if you vote Democrat, you might not be. But on the Jewish calendar, the year is 5785, 5,785. That's the year on the Jewish calendar. And a friend texted this morning, said, the Jewish year is 5785 and the Muslim year is 1446. 1446. Each group behaves accordingly. See, and then, we're kind of in the middle. We're 2024. That's what's going on. What's going on with here. So happy Rosh Hashanah. I got to say, this 5785 thing just seems to be showing off, doesn't it? Let's grab a phone call, Michael. Let's go to Brian calling from Orlando, Florida. Brian, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, good morning, sir. So I was Googling, and I looked up the FEMA first female to run FEMA, and it's Deanne Criswell. I just wanted to let you know. I know nobody else knows, even the employees of FEMA. But she worked for Bill de Blasio out of New York. I did a little quick Wikipedia search on her. And she worked under Bill de Blasio from 2019 to 2021 until de Blasio was removed and they brought in Mayor, the felon Adams. But it's
and she was Air National Guard.
You can't really see. Yes, you can't see anything because she's the first woman, just like the first female vice president, and all the first females. You can't see anything because they're women.
Is she a woman of color?
A woman of color.
Is she's not a woman of color?
White.
She's
No, she's
not a
white.
WOC. How about LGBT?
No. I don't know. I can't say.
So you were about to say she looks. You were about to say she looks, weren't you?
Yeah.
I can tell you said she look, and then you stopped yourself. She look.
I'm looking at a picture of her right now as we speak.
And if you had to guess, if you're rolling the dice, it's hard to say. But we wouldn't want to leap to any conclusions. Besides, everybody loves lesbians. We all love lesbians. You know it. We've got a lot of Democrat stuff for you today. As I said, we've got the Jack Smith looking to tamper with the presidential election. That's the special counsel assigned to jail President Trump because that's what he was assigned to do by the left. That's, they're like Venezuelans, these people. They want to pack the Supreme Court, destroy the economy, open the borders. They're here to wreck the place. They're here for scalps. Can you say scalps, or is that is that culturally insensitive? I'm not so sure. Got the longshoreman strike with the organized crime figure Harold Daggett. Harold Daggett. How many bodies have they found in the trunks of cars in the parking lots of diners in New Jersey that are related to Harold Daggett? I'm not talking about cousins or anything like that either. So we got that. And we've got Hurricane Helene and FEMA. They don't have the money because the money's been forked over to places where they dumped tens of thousands, nay, millions of illegal aliens across the country, gang members who are looking for your daughter. And they want to steal your car, too, just to round things up. But before we get to all that, and we have these wars going on all over the place, too. That's why Joe Biden is the crises president, How many crises has Joe Biden? It's not like he's got all these crises on his plate that he's got to solve. These are crises that he created, for the most part, certainly arguably. But the Republican Party, they can come out and argue it all they want when the news media completely ignores them. You know, one of the things that the news media is completely ignoring right now is the husband of the Democrat candidate for the presidency, who is not what you'd call a nice person. He's not what you'd call a good person. He is a Democrat, I think is the short version. And you may be aware that Doug Emhoff, and again, his Secret Service code name is Thug. They just call him Thug. It's short for Doug Emhoff. It's kind of a contraction of Doug Emhoff. And his Secret Service code name is Thug. They also, when he's moving, they call him Slugger. Slugger is on the move. Slugger is on the move. Why do they call him Slugger, Michael? Well, because he's an abuser. They say he's this model of masculinity in America. They of course hold masculinity in contempt. So when they say that you're the model for masculinity, it's not a compliment. It's an insult, because they believe that masculinity is toxic unless, it's being sported by someone like Hillary Clinton, in which case they like it when she's, grabbing herself and adjusting while she's walking, stuff like, hey, look how masculine she is. But Doug the Thug Emhoff, the slugger, the Democrat Party slugger, I was telling you about the story yesterday that just broke yesterday in the Daily Mail, that Doug Emhoff, who knocked up the nanny, right, in his previous marriage, which didn't go so well, and I mean the previous marriage didn't go so well. He impregnated, you might say knocked up the nanny. The nanny also was the school teacher of the kids at the school where Doug Emhoff and his now ex-wife, as you might imagine, sent their kids an exclusive private school. I think it was like $41,000 a year per student, and that's okay because he went to law school, and he's out there stealing from people. He's a lawyer. Come on. So Doug Emhoff doesn't sound like his resume is not really the best resume that you've ever heard. He has this past, the domestic violence, the knocking up the nanny. Who did that? Arnold Schwarzenegger did that too, right? He married a member of the Kennedy family, so he figured it was okay. And turned out it kind of was. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was allegedly a Republican. He was an immigrant, from Austria. I'm not from Germany. And he knocked up the nanny, but he married a woman of the Kennedy family. So she's like, yeah, isn't that what they all do? That's men, duh, in the Kennedy family. But now Kamala Harris, who, when she was involved with Willie Brown, the powerful California Democrat, he was a married man, right? I'm beginning to think that Democrats do not respect the institution of marriage. Is that possible? I don't know. There are a couple of indicators that might suggest that. But Doug Emhoff, if he were a Republican, CNN and MSNBC and the entertainment networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, they'd be going bumper to bumper, wall to wall with this unbelievable story of the man who would be the first gentleman moving into the White House, this girlfriend slapping, woman abusing, pound me too. They're going to give him a Pound Me Too award. Why do they call it Pound Me Too anyway? Why do they call it that? They say it's hashtag Me Too, but that's a pound sign, isn't it? Did that change at some point? That's Pound Me Too. But the New York Post has the story. The Washington Post, my best girl was going through the Washington Post today at home. We're on the couch and we're having a nice time. And the Washington Post came to the front door. I brought it in here to the radio station. I have it right here. Not a mention of any of the Doug Emhoff stuff in the Washington Post today because it's not a newspaper. Democracy died in the darkness of the Washington Post. But the New York Post has the story. Harris's past domestic violence statements come back to haunt her in wake of allegations Doug Emhoff slapped ex-girlfriend. That's the headline. But that's just, a small part of it. And really, one of the hilarious, I don't know how the Democrats do that. They make mass murder hilarious. They make transgender children hilarious. They just make everything funny. But when he slapped the girlfriend of his real hard, so hard that she went spinning around, they were at a party being hosted by Harvey Weinstein. People like to say you can't make it up. You don't have to make it up. The Democrats do it. So nobody has to make anything up. Vice President Kamala Harris's past condemnations of domestic violence and sexual assault perpetrators are coming back to haunt her following a report of her now husband, quote, forcefully slapping an ex-girlfriend. It's more than a decade ago. If you're a Republican, what was the Brett Kavanaugh thing? I think he was supposed to be in high school when he was mean to a girl at a party that nobody remembers. She doesn't know what year it was. Kind of like the woman that accused Donald Trump of having sex with her at the dressing room at Bergdorf Goodman in New York. Doesn't remember what year it is. You think, something like this would make an impression on you. No? Like, I remember September 11th, 2001. That was in 2001, right? That's because it made an impression on me. So second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, a 59-year-old Hollywood lawyer, struck his then flame, a successful New York attorney, apparently not too successful, in the face so hard she spun around. And the two waited in the valet. They were waiting for their limousine or something, and the valet line. Well, they had a rented car. They're in Cannes. I guess I've rented a car and driven through Cannes myself. So but I was just going through. I wasn't there for the film festival. And I didn't slap my best girl real hard. Maybe just a little pat on the butt or something, but that's about it. That'd be about it. So they're waiting in the valet line following an event at the Cannes Film Festival in 2012. 3 anonymous friends of the woman told the Daily Mail, and I gotta tell you, Annie, you find MSNBC talking about this story? No mention. And you use the magic machine to check to see, and MSNBC has not mentioned it. How about CNN? Has CNN? You check CNN? CNN hasn't mentioned it. They haven't mentioned the Doug Emhoff slap because they're protectors, defenders. They're going to give him a tongue bath. The way that maybe Olivia Nuzzi's giving him a call. I think Olivia Nuzzi sending him pictures and short videos maybe. Amazing stuff. Remember that Believe the Women stuff? That was all a lie. That was just another Democrat prank they were playing on us. But the New York Post does report the story. Harris critics swiftly seized on the alleged abuse, purportedly prompted by Emhoff's misplaced jealousy in assuming that the beau was flirting with another man. And they're in France, too. You know what that means? What does that mean? That means they're in France. It's a really, a nasty guy, but when you're a Democrat, it's not a problem. And, the whole president claiming you have to believe the women of the vice president because Kamala Harris says, we must believe the women. We must believe the women who are, quote, survivors of sexual assault. That's what she said. Believe survivors, one ex-user said Tuesday, sharing the Daily Mail's troubling report about the second gentleman who's hoping to ascend to being the first gentleman. He'd be the first gentleman. He's already the second gentleman. Right? And he lives in the vice president's residence about 2 miles from this radio station. And there he is. Except Doug Emhoff's wife, as first wife, another user noted, referenced the second gentleman's marriage ending after he impregnated his child's nanny. Got to, boink, boink, knock her up. She's waddling around. That's not so good for the marriage. Because, so just amazing stuff. Now we've got some audio on all of this, don't we, Michael? Yes, we do. You may remember we go to soundbite numero uno, as the DNC likes to say. Remember, Barack Obama warned us all we had to learn Spanish and the fundamental transformation of America. Didn't say it was going to be better. He just said it was going to be transformed. Jen Psaki, who was a White House spokesmodel for, of all people, Joe Biden. And then she immediately got $1 million job at MSDNC, where she does the same thing she did at the White House, and that is lies for the Democrat Party. And she was fluffing Doug Emhoff, giving him a big tongue bath. And I think when they did this, they were in a jacuzzi, and it's hard to see with their hands all under the water and everything. What they were wearing, hard to say. Jen Psaki and Doug Emhoff on his manly masculinity, his musky manly smell.
An interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse.
He's an incredibly supportive spouse. Yeah. If she starts falling over, he'll grab her. But he's incredible. Maybe slap her real good. And then they say, you're a wife guy. You're a wife guy. And nobody's entirely sure what that means, but it's a saying that Democrats use.
There's a pop culture phrase, wife guy, which you've kind of been known as. Are you familiar with this?
I've heard about it.
As called a wife guy, a proud wife guy? How do you feel about that?
Well, if I do something annoying to Kamala and she gets upset, I'll just show her that article. Right. I'll say, I'm trying.
Or a T-shirt or a mug.
Yeah.
T-shirt or mug. You remember Kamala Harris said that she believed Christine Blasey Ford when Christine Blasey Ford said that Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh 40 years earlier in high school had been mean to her. And then it turned out, eyewitness accounts said that what he was doing at the party was handing out red Solo cups, which is gentlemanly. But never mind that. Pretty amazing stuff.
I believe her. She is putting herself out there, knowing that they're going to try and excoriate her. And she's doing it, I believe, because she knows that this is an important matter.
Excoriate is a pretty big word for Kamala Harris. I've got to say, I'm impressed she was able to whip that one out. Speaking of whipping that one out, let's go back to Doug Emhoff because he sat down and they got a back rub and a front rub from Jonathan Capehart being fluffed on, once again, MSDNC. Capehart, also Washington Post, because they're not truthful people. But again, the musky masculinity thing is sweeping them away.
Can we just talk about masculinity for a moment?
Who better?
Has being second gentleman changed your own view of perceived gender roles or what it means to be a man?
There's too much of toxicity. It's masculine toxicity out there. And we've kind of confused what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, where you've got this trope out there that you've got to be tough and
slap women off their feet at the Cannes Film Festival while you're hanging out with Harvey Weinstein. It's good to be a Democrat, isn't it? So you knock up the nanny. The nanny was the school teacher until Doug said, hey, maybe we should have her around the house. And she's around the house, and she started to get even more round. And it's, hey, what's with that? Doug and I think we're going to have to get divorced now because... And then the nanny, who had a funny name, said, threw her a few $100, gave her a ride down to the place, maybe. Might have picked her up. Might have picked her up after, because he saw Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You got to do the pickup, too. That's really important. He knows. These are the Democrats, and the news media is not covering the story. Not in the Washington Post, not on CNN, not on MSNBC. We searched. They're not in the news business. They're in the propaganda business at the behest of the Democrat Party. And mostly they're sleeping with each other. And when I say sleeping, I don't mean like the snoring kind. Yes, the second gentleman making his way to the White House because we need another espousal abuser in the White House. Democrats, you know how they are. All right, let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Mike calling from Sunshine, Maryland. Michael, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, thanks for taking my call. We have to get to the bottom of this hush money that Emhoff paid to his nanny. He paid $80,000 in hush money and had her sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, if he was married to Kamala when he paid her this hush money, we got to get Judge Merchan and Alvin Bragg on this. And he needs to be brought up on charges quickly because that money had to come out of campaign funds as opposed to his personal account.
You're raising these very important questions, and it is a situation that is analogous to President Trump's circumstance. And President Trump was hit with 34 felony counts by the Democrats' corrupt machine over a non-disclosure agreement involving an alleged relationship with a young woman. And Doug Emhoff here, who we know knocked up the nanny and either paid for her abortion or whatever. Maybe they sold the child into sex slavery in Mexico to one of the cartels. We don't know for sure, and they're not talking. But you're right. This is I assume there's a non-disclosure agreement for the nanny as well. But the woman that he was dating for 3 months and slapped at the Harvey Weinstein party in Cannes in France at the film festival, that is you're absolutely right, $80,000 payoff, non-disclosure agreement. How do we know it wasn't campaign money? We're going to need the details, and these women need to come forward, right?
That's right. I thought the NDA and the $80,000 was paid to the nanny. Maybe it was to the woman he slapped. But in any case, Judge Merchan and Alvin Bragg need to get on this.
You're 100% right. And, Jack Smith doesn't seem to have a lot to do either with his time. So, Jack, maybe we need a special counsel appointed. I think the Republicans in the House of Representatives need to appoint a special counsel. They need to go to the Justice Department. A special counsel needs to be appointed to investigate spousal abuse and nanny abuse and my date at the Cannes Film Festival abuse, because this man might become the first gentleman. Can you imagine the Democrats taking the first man to be the first lady living in the White House, and he's a woman-beating, nanny knocker-upper, non-disclosure agreement boy?